So this is Sean from Cycle News, and we are out here in Prescott Valley, Arizona. Just rode, can't tell from here, but we just rode up about 1,000 feet of elevation on the two Surron Ultra Bs. So this is the 2024 model. This is the new Surron Ultra B HP, it's called. Has a little extra horsepower. It's my buddy Nick. He rides out here all the time in Arizona. Talk about like what you normally ride, and like what do you think about riding electric bikes out here?
Yeah, so the terrain out here kind of forces everybody on a 300. I'm on a KTM 300. It's a 2024 XCW, and used to doing that, and I got on this, and I would say this inspires a bunch of confidence being lower to the ground and having sort of just a more compact feel than the big bike. Right out of the gate, it has lots of torque. So with the battery, it puts the power down to the ground right now, so much so that it's maybe a little bit much.
On these technical trails it is, huh?
Yeah.
In fact, there's three modes on these things for power. I know we were actually using the like second and even the lowest mode sometimes in these really rocky sections because it was a little easier to ride. The sport mode, we did a little drag race, kind of to compare the extra power on the new 2025 model. I think both of us could barely keep the front wheel down when you get traction. I mean, they have some serious grunt off the bottom, and like I said, if you have traction, it's hard to keep the front end down. So pretty fun. So I'll go through a couple of the specs on these things. Like I said, this is the 24 model. I actually own this bike, had this bike for not quite a year yet, but it was actually raced at the Tennessee Knockout Hard Enduro. We put it back to 100% stock, other than it has a better skid plate on it because of all the rocks out here. But we wanted stock versus stock on the new 2025 model. Trying to kind of see how like the 25 model compares to the 2024 model. 24, at the end of 24, they actually switched out to an 18-inch rear wheel versus they used to be 19-19. The 19 front's a little funky. I think you said it too. You'd rather have a 21 on these things probably. Yeah. That's one of the things that we put on when my buddy raced this bike. He actually put a 21-inch front, gummy tires and all that. Otherwise, he actually raced it pretty much stock. But yeah, I think a 21-inch front wheel would be the way to go. The 18 is a big improvement from what it used to be. The one issue we did have actually is we spun the tire on one of these because they don't have rim locks on them. So putting rim locks would be the thing to do, and probably upgrading the tires. These come with some CST tires. We rode them 100% stock, beat the crap out of them. We got about 150 miles on this one already. This one has about 400 miles on it already. They're pretty durable. I mean, I think like we beat through the rocks. I mean, so yeah, they're pretty durable. They got like a little storage under the seat here. It's like Nick said, they're a little smaller, shorter wheelbase, a little lower seat height. It's a 54-inch wheelbase, 35-inch seat height. It's a couple inches shorter than like your 300. Gives you a little confidence though, like you said. I think it lets you ride through some things that maybe you wouldn't even try, sort of. The one thing we did notice on the higher speed stuff we rode today, on the beginning of the trail, they definitely feel a little sketchy. At high speed. I think that again, that's where the 21-inch wheel maybe would help on the front. They have pretty good travel. 12 inches of ground clearance, 9.4 inches of wheel travel. So not quite as much as our KTMs or other full-size off-road bikes, but still pretty good. So the differences on the 2025 model then, it's a bigger battery now. So this bike now has a 74 volt, 60 amp hour battery. Has a little bit more power as well, 18 kilowatts versus 12.5 on the 24 model. This also has a little turbo mode here. I'm not a big fan of the turbo mode, honestly. Really, like the thing has so much power as it is. And with the turbo mode, you really don't have control of it. It's just like, it's like a launch mode. I could see if you were like racing some arena crosses or something, which I know like guys like Josh Hill race these things in arena cross with just wheels and bigger wheels, bigger 21-inch front wheel, and for the start maybe it'd be good if you could time it. But I think it's got plenty of power as it is. So it's cool, but it's almost like the hyper mode on the Stark. It's like cool to do it once or twice, but it's not something you're really gonna ride. Had more power, more torque. 377 foot-pounds of torque versus 324 on the previous model. A 450 motocross bike has like 50. So it's insane, like how much torque the thing has. They claim more range. Reality is we've actually seen that they're about the same. Because of the extra power, it does have a bigger battery. but because of the extra power, it draws down that power a little bit more. So we've actually seen, even the two of us swapping back and forth on bikes, pretty much the same battery range. So like we haven't really seen real world extra range on it, but the range is pretty solid. I mean,
It is.
yeah, like, I mean, we've rode this is the third time we've ridden together on these things. Like those, I mean, the trails we've ridden over there, ridden an hour and a half of solid riding time. Feel like you're pretty much done when you get done with it, right?
Yeah, a lot of climbing and still only halfway done with the battery.
Yeah, so I mean, an hour and a half and we're like 40-50% left. So it's pretty darn cool. Like solid 3 hours of riding time of just riding around. If you're on it hard, yeah, you can burn the thing down. If you're on a motocross track, I'm sure you could burn the thing down in an hour. But versus, you know, I mean, it's not really what they're good for, I think. I think they're really fun for exploring and trails and the stuff like we have out here.
Only time I was even conscientious of the battery was when I first rode it.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how, you know, because you don't know. But then after the second ride, I was like, you don't even worry about the battery because you know you're not going to burn through it inside any normal ride time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty darn cool. That's what, you know, to me, it's an alternative. I don't see it as a replacement for a full-size bike, but I could see it as having my only bike as well, you know?
Yeah.
And as an alternative bike too. The previous model weighs 187 pounds. With the bigger battery and all that, these things weigh 195 now. They feel light. I mean,
yeah, they felt super light.
Yeah, compared to riding a 300. I mean, a 300's 230-ish with fuel and everything.
And even though that's got more power, it seemed like that one, in at least the D mode and Eco mode, rolled on a little easier. Like it was more
Yeah,
tinny.
it's actually one of the updates on this is it does have a new controller. Yeah, and we could definitely tell the difference, both of us, when we swap back and forth bikes. When some of these rocky, chunky sections we were riding, when you're trying to ease onto it and not let the tires spin out, this thing definitely, the 2025 model, that new controller is actually a big improvement. It is an updated motor starting late 24. Basically gives a little more peak power and it revs out longer before the older one would actually kind of fall off when it got up to higher RPMs. These things, you don't even really notice it. They just keep pulling. They pull plenty fast for me, where I don't need to feel like I don't feel like it needs to go any faster. And they'll go 59 miles an hour claimed. Like I said, with that small wheel and all that, you start to get a little sketchy at that higher speed. But yeah, otherwise the thing's super stable. The suspension's pretty good. One of the other upgrades actually is the new bike does have upgraded suspension and has a crawling function. We actually didn't even mess with the crawling function, but like I said, we didn't feel the need to. Has reverse, which is pretty darn cool. It's something you wouldn't even think you need on a motorcycle, but in some of these little rocky sections, when you're trying to do a turnaround and you're faced up against a rock.
Easy to use, works well.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool little function, like that you never even think you need on one of these things on a motorcycle, right? And then you try it, you're like, oh, that's actually pretty darn cool. So,
you know, they don't when you pull the clutch in on a regular bike, you get the freewheel.
Yep.
And so these feel like they're always under some kind of tension, right? Like just a little drag.
Yep.
Not so much.
Has a little bit of engine brake. It's actually one of the things that's adjustable on these, and we didn't really mess with them much because we didn't feel the need to. But they do have you can change. It's like a regen mode actually, and it's actually regenerating power. And on the higher regen, we're actually on the neutral setting right now. On the higher levels, it would actually have more even drag and engine brake. We didn't really feel the need to mess with that because, like I said, the range was plenty good for us. So we didn't really feel the need for that. One thing that is still the same, these things are still $6,500, which is pretty darn impressive. Like the fun factor for that price range, I think they're pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and they're kind of in a niche. You can select it as a niche all on its own.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a super ripping little woods bike for tight single track, and then it also does okay, you know, on the open sections it flies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's like I said, pretty darn fun. I said the bang for the buck, $6,500 is pretty cool. I know this is, like I said, three times now that we've ridden together. I've ridden this thing a few other times. This thing's, and I own this bike and ridden it a lot over the last couple of years. I had another one before this actually. As far as durability goes, we've actually beat the crap out of these things during the time we've had them. This bike here, like I said, raced the Tennessee Knockout Hard Enduro. We actually used it to mark course for several days. We've had another one from the year before that we've used now 2 years there, laying out course on gnarly, rocky terrain, and it totally holds up fine. So durability wise, and I know a lot of people own these things, I mean, they hold up really well. Like I said, the only issue we've had actually with either of these, they both spun the tire a little bit. The older one actually spun it enough to actually rip the valve stem out. I had to swap the tube out before we rode today. This one started spinning as well, so I spun it back in place and put a little extra air in it before we rode today. No air filters to clean, no oil to change. It's like I literally blew off with an air compressor, blew the dust off.
Ride.
Yeah, it's pretty darn fun.
Yeah, and if you get hung up in a section, you know, one thing that's probably not well understood unless you're in the section is even with an E-start, you got to find the E-start, you got to make sure your clutch is in, you're neutral. On these, it's ready, go.
Yep.
So if you get hung up, you're not in too much busy trouble that you have to get yourself out of, or you're not shifting or whatever. You can put your foot wherever you want. That's a nice little plus.
Yep.
It inspires a little bit of confidence. And
we didn't even really talk about it a bit. Like we're more intermediate level off-road riding, but like a beginner level bike, like I've actually had some of my, you know, I've taught people to ride on these things, and you can put it down in that eco mode where the thing doesn't just take off and rip. It actually has the traction control, which you can turn on for somebody new, like it won't get away from them and spook them. So it's a really good beginner bike as well. And it's also a little lower seat height, kind of the size of like a TTR 125 or something. So yeah.
But buyer beware, if you're in turbo and you put on the gas, it will get away from you.
Yeah, definitely. So it's got both ends.
Yeah, it's got
both ends of the spectrum. So you did mention the brakes. We probably should bring that up real quick. It is both hand brakes on these bikes. So there is not a rear brake pedal down there. The rear brake is actually on the left side. So the front brake is like normal on a motorcycle, right side. So it's flipped from like what most mountain bikes come as. I personally don't switch them though. I don't switch my mountain bike, so I don't have a problem when I ride them. I know some people like to switch their mountain bikes to be the same as moto style. But one little cool thing, actually, you had mentioned that you don't have the clutch to, like, when you're starting to get too much traction on a climb, to kind of put it back down. And I told you my little trick, which is this is still on your clutch hand, and if you just touch it a little bit, it's the rear brake, and it brings it down almost like the clutch does.
Yeah, it can dampen power and give you traction and tractability over some of the loose stuff. And it works really well.
Yep.
Just like, I mean, very similar to a clutch.
That's the one thing, like there's a little bit of that learning thing, because versus electric bike versus a regular bike with a clutch and everything. But that's when you learn pretty quickly, I think. When I took off this morning, I had just ridden an adventure bike yesterday. I'm like feeling for the rear brake, going, where's everything at? 10 minutes down the trail, you kind of forget about it.
The one thing I would say about Eco versus the D mode, so Eco is really, really good for slower riding, but it doesn't have enough, right? It's a little too mild in some of the sections, whereas the D mode and sport mode are going to be a little bit too, they ramp up too quick. It would be great to get it right in the middle. Like that sweet spot between Eco and D, I think would make for an extremely good woods and enduro tech riding bike.
Yeah, and in the sport mode, it's a little too much. Like I ended up, we had that, you called it little mini Carl's Diner rock section, the first thing up the trail this morning. And I was on sport mode and it'll get away from you. So then I put the traction control on. The balance there is it kind of works, but it still gets away from you a little too much. And so I ended up going down to that D mode. The Eco, like you said, wasn't enough to kind of keep it going. The Eco mode will actually stop when you're in that critical point sometimes, little tipping points. So, but yeah, super fun. We're going to keep on ripping these things as much as we can until I have to give this one back, unfortunately. So yeah, like I said, $6,500. This new one has a little more power, a little better suspension, bigger battery. Yeah, so this is an improvement over the previous bike. Ride time, like I said, we didn't really see the extra ride time they claimed, but to me, honestly, hour and a half, 2 hours, we still had 40-50% battery left. We ride, I've ridden this thing 3 hours to get it down to zero. When you're just out play riding and trail riding, like I said, if you're on full twist in the throttle, maybe a little bit less than that. But otherwise, these things are super fun. Hopefully you like this. Check out cyclenews.com, Cycle News Magazine, and subscribe to the Cycle News YouTube channel.